before we go back to what we were doing last week, I want to read one other scripture that verifies this, this motive of love. It's Colossians 3:23, and this is New Living Translation. If you're checking, it says, "Work willingly at whatever you do, as though you were working for the Lord rather than people." And why does that connect with this at all? That really doesn't. It's not like, okay, well, I love those people, so I'm doing things for them. No, because our love comes and goes. We need to have a more steady love, a more, what I would call perfect love, even though our love can't be perfect. If we love the Lord, He will provide love in adequate quantity to do what you need to do. Okay, so when it says work willingly at whatever you do, okay, well, most of us have chosen what we work at, so darn, why wouldn't I be willing to do it, right? What if you're asked to do something you don't like to do? What if it includes humbling yourself to do something you feel is not up to your skill level? What if it's something that even is demeaning, that you feel like, man, I'm past that. I don't want to do that. And this was something that really helped change me. So I don't want to skim over this. I could give you several examples of, in a sense, it's kind of like fasting, right? You give up, instead of food, you give up your desire to do something that's honorable, to do something that gives you back that feeling like I'm worth something. Because if you're doing things to give you value, you're not working willingly at whatever you do. You're not doing it as though you were working for the Lord rather than people. And people, by the way, includes ourselves. Are you afraid to be seen as less than what you are, than what you consider yourself? Are you afraid that people won't view you as worth treating better? That's just a question. You can answer it for yourself. But remember that our thoughts about fear and love make perfect sense if you think about it this way. If you think inward, now I'm going to be careful not to sound too psychological here, because this is a spiritual matter. It's a very important spiritual matter, that if you understand the difference between fear and love in spiritual context, it will free you. And so pay attention to this, and I think it'll help. The one who does not love does not know God, because God is love. 1 John 4, and I can't remember what verse that was. The one who does not love, in other words, they're into themselves. And I use the word into because being self-oriented, self-focused is an inward problem. It is a problem, because that is void of love. You might even think, well, I need to love myself, so I got to focus on me, and so on and so forth. And I hear this a lot with people. It's like, well, it's time to focus on me and make me feel good. And I say, well, okay, maybe there's a time for that. But if our lives tend to be more focused inward on taking care of what I want, what I would like to do, the things that I like, then we are bound not to love. It is the biggest barrier to love, is self-focus, right? And what happens is when you're focused inward, you're latching on to all this fear, because everything that God puts in our lives is designed to get us to look outside of ourselves. Everything. And yet, if we are trying desperately to fend off all that stuff, to shield ourselves, to, away, and because I gotta do me, I gotta take care of my stuff, then we are bound to not love. We're saying no to fruit. Are you getting the parallel here? So that's why fear and love are polar opposites, right? Because if you're focused on all the things that I think I need and want, everybody else can pound dirt, because I'm not paying attention to them. I'm not going to make that long traverse. And if you do make that long traverse, and here we're talking about spiritual love and spiritual fear. We're not talking about doing good things for somebody. That's not love, unless that's what motivated it. And the kind of love we're talking about is selfless love. So you're going, not me. And if my motive is to, well, I'm going to give them this gift because I want them to think this of me, then we're still over here. Are you getting it? Okay, because these terms in the spiritual realm are what make us fruitful or not fruitful. The Bible verse says perfect love drives out all fear. Okay, so there's gradations. You see, you see it on both ends. Perfect love means that there's imperfect love. And I should be on this end, right? And all fear means that that's like the ultimate of fearfulness, is all those fears. If you had perfect love, then you would have no fear. Okay, so in between there is where we generally live, right? Selflessness can happen sometimes. And man, I love it when I can do that. That's why God was training me in that one particular situation to give of myself. I'm not talking about money or possessions. I'm talking about time. Time and humility to do the things they wanted me to do was living in that love that expected nothing in return. And yet I would jump back as soon as I got an opportunity, somebody that to do something nice for somebody who irritated me. I'd be like, nah, man, my pride sealed me off for good. I'm not going to let them get one over on me. I'm not going to let them take advantage of me, because that's what that would feel like, right? If I did something nice for somebody who was annoying to me, who intentionally wanted to see me fall. And Christ himself said, love even your enemies, right? And he's not talking about imperfect love. He's not talking about doing something nice begrudgingly. He's not talking about just doing. He's talking about, no, your spirit needs to be in the right place. Do it as if it were me. Jesus said, he would say that. If you have to pretend for a little bit until it becomes more natural. Let's just say anytime we experience the presence of the Lord, it's sort of like being in that boat with Jesus during the storm, right? He's taking a nap. And while he was asleep, there was fear.
Yeah.
When he woke up, the first thing he does is say, cool it, storm, be still. And so he took their reason for fear and he controlled it. He put it under his dominion. He said, whoop, down. And it's a demonstration that we don't get to experience all the time. It's one of those things that you go, man, if that could just happen all the time, I would be cool. That Jesus would just show up when my heart rate is going like this and I'm ready to jump out of my skin because of this situation. If Jesus would just show up, that would all go away. But he demonstrates that he's in control, so we can go to him. And then it's not his supernatural thing that gets us out of fear. It's us recognizing our source of love. When you do that, you go, my reason for fear is irrational. And I know this is just talking kind of clinically, so to speak. Your head will tell you fear is irrational at this point. Why am I afraid? God's got me. Yet your heart's still going and you're going, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And so this is the training part. This is the part where we have to exert dominion over this power over us. It's just like any sin. God doesn't come, he takes away the consequences of sin in our lives. He takes away the power. He gives us the power because he is the power. Yet we got to do the action. He doesn't just show up and go, whoop, all good now. And so your experience of the infilling or the presence of the Lord is simply a reminder. And I've had plenty of that myself, where and sometimes it comes with some revelation. It opens our eyes a little bit further and we go, oh, yeah. And then later on you go, now I realize why he was so present with me at that point. It was to remind me there's something coming up. You need to be remembering that I'm in you. I'll never leave you nor forsake you. And that presence isn't something that you simply use as a bailout. It's something that motivates you to love, to keep you out of fear. And if I know who I'm following, I'm not very likely to let fear get in the way. If I remind myself, because that's really what the Christian life is about you and me knowing what it says so thoroughly that we can remind ourselves of those things over and over and over again until it becomes so normal for us that if we go off course, we go, stop it, and we get back on course, right? You don't have to wallow in it. You don't have to go through some elaborate repentance, because you just were about to step off into the mud and you pulled your foot back because you know better. We can talk about all these things, but we are in some stage in our lives of getting better about these things, getting past some things, and yet no matter where we end up, we still got something that we struggle with. So I don't look down on you for being in that place, because the bottom line is that you will, if you seek the Lord for a solution to this, he will make his presence known to you when you need it the most. I'm really sure of it. If you seek him above all things. And having people to help us at that time is awesome. Is awesome. And I don't minimize that, because we are to support each other. That's part of bearing fruit in itself, is letting somebody to love us in such a way that they hold our hand, or they give us a hug and they say, it's going to be okay, calm down, settle down, it's all right. And that's an extension of God in itself. So God will use people as his arm sometimes to help us. And yet I look back on the things that I used to be afraid of, and I wonder, I say to myself, because it's been years and because I've been aware of it long enough where I kept asking him to solve this problem for me, he then showed me how, just by being in his presence more, just by knowing his word better, just by implanting his mind into my mind, that my fears just in a minuscule way just started to get shaved off. And there's some that still remain, but I'm really super aware of them. And I know how to talk to myself now. This is a different thing than I used to, because I didn't used to talk well to myself. I was either disrespectful to Merlin, or I wouldn't talk at all. I would shut off, and I would just pretend like everything was going to be fine. I mean, that's irrational, right? But that's my mechanism, and you got a different one. We were all brought up differently, and we have different genetic dispositions. God made us different. And so how you go to God is going to be different than how I go to God, because I'm not the same person as you. We can't all use the same exact tools, but we have the same source of all those tools. Where he allows us a peek behind his thoughts. And you might see a potential grain, microscopic grain of fear in that prayer. Lord, if it be your will to take this cup from me, let it be. If it be your will to go through it, your will be done. So if you look at it from a human perspective, you might detect a little tiny grain of fear. I know it's not fear. Jesus knew exactly what was going to happen, but he was expressing for us, for our benefit, in John 17, all the things that he was thinking. He was praying for first the world, then the disciples, then us. And everything's outwardly focused. None of it was about Jesus, right? He was only using his talk about him and the Father to explain to us what oneness looked like. He wasn't saying, oh, wow, look at me. And I mean, I'm going through this stuff, man, who could take this but me? You know what I mean? He could have been one of those people who was like self-focused. Can you imagine God being self-focused? Ooh, we'd be in big trouble. We wouldn't be around here, because he wouldn't have loved us before time, designed us, and had us perfectly created in our mother's womb, had he not been 100% outwardly focused. You getting the picture here? That's why when God said God is love, that means he's 0% fear. He's not afraid what you think of him. He's not afraid to be wrong, because he's never wrong. He's not afraid things are going to get out of control, because he's in control. Because what it does is it teaches us to be more like him. The more like him we become, the less fear we have, because he's 0% fear, 100% love. And in our lives, we're varying percentages on the scale, depending on our day. And some days we are 100% self. Don't mess with me. Don't bother me. I can't deal with anybody. You know what I mean? And I realize that we have days that are good and days that are bad. But in general, the idea is that being inwardly focused will keep us in that high percentage towards self. Being outwardly focused, starting to say to somebody, even if you're not used to it, tell me about your day. Tell me what you think about this thing. Even if you want so bad to express your opinion about it, tell me what you think. Not so you can come back with your argument, but so you can let them express to you. So you can let them feel, sense, and know you care. So this kind of love that has a reduced percentage of fear in it takes practice. God isn't gonna go, whoop, there you go, you're done now. He doesn't do stuff like that, generally speaking. So in my life, I've had lots of ups and downs on that. I've had days when I felt like my love flowed like a river, and I could give out and give out and give out. And I was so full of joy that I was beside myself. I was jumping up and down because the Lord lit me up so much that I would give somebody the shirt off my back. And it wasn't like I was doing it for me. I was doing it for God. I was doing it for those people. I wanted to see them sense him. Those experiences of great selfless love didn't just happen. They happened because I seek the Lord with all my heart. I said, whatever you want, I want. And I made that my number one priority. And what he didn't zap me. He didn't, give me some really high and mighty spiritual revelation. He sent me to serve. We can't even comprehend what he has in store for us because it's about other people. It's not about us. And when that happens, it takes us to a new level of revelation, a new level of experience in our lives. And it's not about feeling good. I know I said it made me feel good. But at the same time, I'm humbled and realize that there's so much work to do. There's so many people hurting. There's so much. And I vacillate between sorrow and grieving for the unsaved, and then going back and working with one. I'm like, oh my gosh, just one at a time. And the Lord says, yeah, that's okay. I'm like, all right, I just want to be where you're at and where you want me to be. I want to abide in the vine. And sometimes that vine takes you to weird places with weird people and all that stuff. And so in my experience, it doesn't happen because I decide to go back out and be with people. It comes from me getting low in the presence of the Lord. And then he reveals something new.